be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly.
Peaceful protest.
Peaceful protesters.
Peaceful protest.
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 Good evening. I'm Robert Crescione. Thanks for joining me for America in Danger. Today is the 17th of April, 2021. Thanks for tuning in. You know, there's a lot going on right now, and I like to look at things with a perspective that's probably a little different than some of the news channels and a lot different than mainstream most of the time. And you know, I'm an ordinary citizen like you all out there, but I didn't just wake up with Donald Trump. I didn't just wake up with the Tea Party. I've been looking into these things for 30 odd years now. And if you look at these things long enough and you study long enough and you learn the patterns out there, you come to realize that there's nothing new under the sun, number one, but that the individuals in Washington simply cycle through. You know, we think it's left versus right, and well, we're going to win this time, and they're going to. Well, they just cycle through, and the patterns that are demonstrated to us are clear. You know, we see a Republican administration push for certain things, and they'll hand off things to the Democrats to make sure they get implemented. The Republicans will feign a fight for their duration, and then they'll simply hand it off. And this was the case of NAFTA. You know, the Bush clan essentially laid the groundwork for NAFTA and simply passed it off to Bill Clinton to get ratified. So, you know, that's how these things work. But don't ever get me wrong, I'm not telling you how to think. I don't want to tell you how to think. I don't want anyone to tell me how to think. But I do want to point things out. And I'm going to point things out and give you a little bit of my perspective on them. And hopefully that will trigger some to think about these things a little bit and maybe look a little deeper into things. Because often what we see at face value is not at all what it seems, especially in the media. Now tonight, I want to talk about something that is near and dear to me because I'm a licensed firearm dealer. And I enjoy shooting and have all my life. And right now we have a major push for gun control on. Now, there are those out there who will argue it and say, oh, well, you know, you don't need a 30-round mag, you don't need this, you don't need that. Well, my right as an individual citizen says that I need whatever I want to have within reason. Now, I'm not saying that I should be able to own nuclear weapons or anything of mass destruction. Let's not be ridiculous. But if I want to own a semi-automatic rifle that holds 30 rounds, then why shouldn't I if I haven't committed a crime? I'm not a criminal. I'm a law-abiding citizen. And when government looks at me as a criminal and says, well, you can't have that, then, you know, that really doesn't sit well with me. And what Mr. Biden is doing, he has nominated a gentleman named David Chipman. And I want to talk about Mr. Chipman a little bit tonight. And I've got a picture that I want to show you of Mr. Chipman. So if Brittany will switch over, I will show you a picture. This is Mr. Chipman. Now, he is Biden's nominee to head the BATF, and the BATF is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They regulate firearms in this country. Now, Mr. Chipman has a long history with BATF. He was at the Ruby Ridge incident, which I don't know if you may not remember Ruby Ridge. Ruby Ridge happened in 1992. An individual, basically a separatist, he wanted to go live outside of civilization and basically live in the woods, Randy Weaver and his family. And U.S. Marshals and the BATF tricked him into selling weapons that he shouldn't have been selling, and they went up and raided his place. They ended up killing his son, his dog, and his wife as she held her infant child in her arms. Very, very shocking case. Mr. Chipman was also at Waco, if you remember when the Branch Davidians in 1993 were killed. He was there. In 1995, he was in Oklahoma City with the bombing investigation. Oh, and he was also in the BATF involved in Fast and Furious, which was a gun running deal set up by the ATF under the auspices of the Obama-Biden administration, and they sold guns into Mexico. They forced dealers to allow straw purchases under threats of other forms of intimidation. They forced gun dealers to do these things, which is illegal. As a gun dealer, you cannot sell a firearm to anyone who is not buying that firearm for themselves. So if someone comes to me and says, yeah, I'm buying this for my cousin, well, I'm sorry, I can't transfer it to you. No ifs, ands, or buts. But Mr. Chipman is a rabid anti-gun zealot who serves as advisor to several anti-gun organizations. Now, to give you an insight into this gentleman, I want to show you some quotes. I want you to hear these quotes from him. Now, I don't have video of him saying this, but these are documented quotes. And I'm going to put them on the screen because I feel like when you read them, they have a little impact. So, Mr. Chipman said this: while at ATF, I conducted studies involving people who failed background checks to determine how many later committed crimes with a gun. Many did. This is a perfect opportunity to arrest people before committing crimes rather than responding after the fact. Now, I don't know if you saw the movie Minority Report. In Minority Report, there was a psychic pre-crimes unit that could see into the future and see crimes being committed, and the pre-crimes unit would go out and arrest these people and put them in prison or whatever else they might have done with them in this dystopian future. But that's what Mr. Chipman's suggesting, that we make criminals out of people who fail a background check. Now, there's any number of reasons you can fail a background check. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a criminal. And very often you can get that cleared up and go ahead and purchase a firearm. But Mr. Chipman would like to arrest everyone who fails a background check as if that's the crime itself, as a preemptive move. So that is very, very scary. Now, he also disparaged first-time gun buyers, and I want you to take a look at this quote. I would suggest to those first-time gun owners, I would secure that gun locked and unloaded and hide it behind the cans of tuna and beef jerky stored in the cabinet and only bring that out when the zombies appear. Now, he was talking about people who were buying firearms because they saw the riots happening across this country. They saw the unrest and they felt threatened. They saw people's homes invaded. They saw businesses burned down. They saw businesses looted. They saw people killed. And there were a lot of first-time buyers who said, you know what, I'm going to buy a firearm because I want to be able to protect my family. Well, Mr. Chipman doesn't think you should be allowed to protect your family. He thinks that the police should protect your family, and only the police, But you know, there's a great saying, you know, when you only have seconds to live, the police are minutes away. And you know, Mr. Chipman is not of the mindset that Americans have any sort of right to protect themselves. You know, and he went on to Reddit, which I don't know if you're familiar with Reddit. I'm not extremely familiar with Reddit, but I understand that there are what they call Ask Me sessions, where you write on a sign, ask me anything, and you hold it up and take a picture of yourself, put a picture on there, and people will write in and ask you questions. Well, during that session, which I think is a bit strange and maybe a little narcissistic as well, but anyway, it's definitely not something that I would want to do. But anyway, during that session, and here's a picture of Mr. Chipman encouraging people to ask him anything. Well, he had this to say. At Waco, cult members used two .50 caliber Barretts to shoot down two Texas Air National Guard helicopters. That's what he said on Reddit. Now, the truth of the matter is that never happened. There were no helicopters shot down at Waco. Now, that's not to say that the Branch Davidians didn't take a couple shots at them, but there were none shot down. There were none hit or shot down. Now, I'm not trying to legitimize the Branch Davidians, nor am I trying to demonize people who choose to live a certain lifestyle, which they did. But during Waco, 78 men, women, and children perished in a fire. They were burned to death, caused by the law enforcement entities. There was never really any repercussions from that. But I want to show you a picture of Mr. Chipman at Waco after the fire. Now, to me, this is a little bit morbid, don't you think? You know, he's out there in front of the burned ruins where 78 men, women, and children, the remains of 78 men, women, and children, including 28 children, lie in ashes. And you know, it just shocks me that someone would be proud of that and stand in front of the ruins like that, holding a rifle. So I think that we really need to look at Mr. Chipman and look at his attitude toward American citizens, and look at his whole attitude toward the Second Amendment and toward all of us as individuals. And I personally think he is unfit to be head of ATF. I think he's unfit to hold any position of authority. So we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about gun control. And later in the show, we're going to talk about how to contact your elected officials. And I want to give you a little breakdown on the structure and how the General Assembly works, because we need to be right up front looking at these people with a microscope on a state level and a local level. So we're going to take a little break. We'll be right back. I'm Robert Crescione. You're watching America in Danger. Stay tuned.
It's our once-a-year incredible warehouse sale.
And you can't miss it.
From traditional to modern, we have the best home furnishings at 60 to 90% off. Thousands of lamps, decorative accessories, and chandeliers. An incredible selection of designer furniture, all conveniently located off I-95. Transform your home this year and save big.
You know where to find us. 218 North Church Street, downtown Rocky Mount.
joy, hope, and peace. Few songs in our lives have the power of hymns. Now you can bring this inspirational music into your home and life every day with 50 Most Loved Hymns, a new 2-CD collection. 50 magnificent hymns, just as you remember them. 50 Most Loved Hymns, a timeless collection for all ages on 2 CDs for only $21.98 plus $5.95 shipping and handling. Call now or order online.
Their price, $30,000. Your price, $20. Can you tell the difference? Even expert jewelers have a difficult time distinguishing the Diamond Z4 CZ from mine diamonds because of their similarity. This exquisite ring features a flawless simulated diamond center stone of 2 3/4 carats surrounded by over 1 1/4 carats of round and tapered flawless baguettes. One jewelry industry professional marveled at their beauty and brilliance.
It's exceedingly rare to see such flawless stones.
He's right. Comparable solitaires made of diamonds can cost up to $30,000. Your price through this special invitation will be only $20. And for a limited time, you can also receive this beautiful band with 1.92 carats of diamond Z4s. You get both CZ rings totaling over an astounding 6 carats for $20. So call or click now.
Call 1-800-203-6540 to get your Diamond Z4. Call now or go to diamondz4.com. So call 1-800-203-6540. That's 1-800-203-6540. Call now.
All right, we're back. Thanks for tuning in to America in Danger tonight. I'm Robert Crescione, and we are talking about gun control. I just went through a little profile on Biden's nominee to head the ATF, which is a very important position because the ATF has been given quite a bit of leeway in interpreting law. And believe me, when they issue a letter of clarification, it typically restricts our rights. So it's very important that we put someone there that is not a rabid anti-gun zealot. Now, since we're on gun control, and we have such a huge push in Congress, the president, all these organizations, the media, and I want to look at some of the atrocities throughout history and see how that relates to gun control. So we're going to start out with a few little remembrances of history. Now, in 1911, Turkey enacted gun control, and from 1915 to 1917, over 1.5 million Armenians were murdered. Now, darn it. Sorry about that. Had a little technical difficulty there. Anyway, 1929, Soviet Union enacted gun control. From 1929 to 1953, over 20 million dissidents were murdered. In 1935, China enacted gun control. And from 1948 to 1952, over 20 million citizens were murdered. And remember, China is currently engaged in a program of genocide against minority populations. Now, in 1938, Germany enacted gun control. And from 1939 to 1945, over 13 million Jews and other Europeans were killed. In 1964, Guatemala enacted gun control. From 1964 to 1981, over 100,000 Mayan Indians were rounded up and killed. In 1970, Uganda enacted gun control. From 1971 to 1979, over 300,000 Christians were murdered. In 1956, Cambodia enacted gun control. From 1975 to 1977, well over 1 million people were rounded up and sent to re-education death camps. Now, in 1979, Rwanda enacted gun control. In 1994, in just 100 days, 800,000 people were murdered. Now, we jump ahead to 2021 in the United States, the good old US of A. We have Democratic legislators call for Trump supporters and conservatives to be rounded up and sent to re-education camps. Sounds a little reminiscent of Cambodia to me. Again, in 2021, in the United States, the president and many legislators call for the removal of firearms from civilian hands. Again, in 2021, in the United States, Facebook fact checkers proclaim that gun control has no correlation with totalitarian regimes and genocide. Well, the Turkish, the Soviets, the Chinese, the Germans, the Guatemalans, the Cambodians, and the Rwandans didn't think it would happen either. Now, those are scary things. And with what went on at the Capitol on January 20th, and the statement that Senator Manchin made, one really has to think about how close any nation, not just third world nations, but any nation is from generating to that point. Our Second Amendment is a huge deterrent to our government. Now, we're not foolish enough to think that we can stand and go toe-to-toe with the military. We're not foolish enough to think that a group of citizens, armed citizens, could go toe-to-toe. It simply wouldn't happen. But if we are disarmed, the deterrence value is gone. You see, our elected officials, they don't want to get into a position. They don't want to push this country into a situation where people are willing to start shooting. You know, we already have elected officials who are supposed to be above all of this, demanding that conservatives, independent thinkers, Trump supporters are rounded up and re-educated. We have the media, we have elected officials again denying the violence of these protests, telling us that, oh, well, burning down buildings is a peaceful protest. You know, I'm not trying to spread fear or rile things up, but we are dangerously close to the situations that I just talked about in Rwanda, China, Cambodia, Guatemala. We are dangerously close to that. When we have rabid elected officials who feel that it is their duty to disarm us and to re-educate us and to control thought, that is a very, very dangerous situation. It's a scary situation. You know, there are some good things that are happening. So I don't want to be all gloom and doom, you know, because as long as we can fight these things, it's not too late. It's never too late until you're on the other side of the barbed wire fence. Then it's too late. There are solutions. That's why I came back to do this show. Because people need to know what the solutions are. And we have a lot of snake oil salesmen out there right now selling us easy solutions. Oh, if we just hold a convention of states, that will solve everything. That'll fix everything. That'll make congressmen and senators jump up and take notice. Well, when they're already ignoring the law of our government, which is the Constitution, does anyone really think that they're going to obey more words? They're not going to. That's because the Constitution is not broken. The electorate is. You know, there are solutions. The media seldom gives you one because they make their living on conflict and non-resolution. Because if everything was perfectly fine, they wouldn't have anything to report. You know, they're fond of saying if it bleeds, it leads. We know that they will hype things up. CNN has just been outed on the fact that they hyped up the COVID pandemic for ratings. We know they do. We absolutely know they do. And they are actually part of the problem. You know, they're certainly not offering solutions. They're simply talking about the problem. And often they will tell you, oh, there's nothing that can be done. You know, and that's where they're wrong. Because there is always something that can be done. You know, Mao, someone just sent me a text talking about this subject. They said, Mao's Little Red Book, quote, "Political power grows from the barrel of a gun." The founders understood that very well. That's why they gave us the Second Amendment. That's why they limited government from taking our firearms. Now, modern legislators think it's perfectly fine for them to encroach on the Second Amendment, to regulate guns. We have quite a few firearm laws right now. And I don't know a single one of them that has actually prevented a crime. We're going to take another little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the General Assembly because it's important for us. This is going to be a little civics lesson, so I want you to stay tuned because these are things that we all need to know because when they start talking the double talk of politics, committees, bills, resolutions, we need to understand what they're talking about. So stay tuned. I'm Robert Crescione. We'll be right back.
It's our once-a-year incredible warehouse sale.
And you can't miss it.
From traditional to modern, we have the best home furnishings at 60 to 90% off. Thousands of lamps, decorative accessories, and chandeliers. An incredible selection of designer furniture, all conveniently located off I-95. Transform your home this year and save big.
You know where to find us. 218 North Church Street, downtown Rocky Mount.
All right, we're back. We've been talking about gun control tonight, and we're going to shift gears a little bit and get into a little bit of civics. And it's important because these are things that are being less than emphasized in the schools these days. And it's important that we understand how the people that we elect, how the people that we vote for operate. You know, it's a sad day, and there are so many people trying to solve a problem that's caused by people, voters, being morbidly uninformed, being so out of the loop, they don't know what their congressmen, what their legislators do. They don't understand what they do. They don't even know what they voted for. If you haven't looked at your congressman and senator's voting record, then how can you comfortably vote for them? Now, I know there are times when you vote simply because the alternative is absolutely horrible and unacceptable, period, unacceptable. But we need to be able to ask that congressman or senator why he voted for something, or to explain why he voted for something. Now, typically, they're going to give us some double talk, and especially if they send you a letter back, sometimes they are a little sarcastic, not all of them. Some of them are very fine individuals to converse with and speak with. But sometimes you get one who sends you a letter back, and you can tell that you've struck a nerve and that they're upset with anyone objecting to the way they think or what they're doing. Well, I'll tell you, and I always say this, being elected does not raise anyone's level of wisdom. Being elected does not suddenly make someone smart. It does not suddenly give them the insight to direct the lives of others. So don't for 1 minute think that simply because someone is elected that they are infallible, because I assure you they are not, and we've seen plenty of that lately. But we're going to talk about the North Carolina General Assembly because it's close to here. It's only 45 minutes away from Rocky Mount. You can drive up there, you can walk the halls of the General Assembly and speak with your representative and your senator. And we all should do that occasionally. But anyway, we're going to go through some things, and I'm going to do it in slideshow fashion so that you can visualize it while I speak about these things. And bear with me now. Pay attention. This is probably things that you were told years ago in school and might have forgotten by now. So we're going to get into this. You know, the North Carolina General Assembly is in Raleigh, number one, and it is very easy to look up their website. And I have to say, the North Carolina General Assembly has a great website, one of the best I've seen. It is very easy to navigate, it's very intuitive, it's easy to find legislation, it's easy to find your congressman, and it's easy to contact them. This is the web address, ncleg.gov, North Carolina Legislature.gov, ncleg.gov. Remember that. If you don't remember that, you can simply type North Carolina General Assembly into your search engine, and it will bring it up. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the structure of the General Assembly. The General Assembly is made up of two chambers. First, you have the House of Representatives, and the other chamber is the Senate. Now, the House is made up of 120 members elected from districts around the state. There is the Speaker of the House, who basically runs the operations of the House. Each member represents a House district somewhere in the state, and the Senate is made up of 50 members, and it is run by the President pro tem. Now, actually, the Lieutenant Governor is the President of the Senate, but typically, if he's not there, the pro tem runs the Senate. And that's really who has most of the power and is in most of the know, because he's there every day. So he's really the one running things. Lieutenant Governor Robinson can break ties if there's a tie in the Senate, and he can preside if he is there that day. But he has other duties and he may not be there, so the President pro tem takes care of that. Now, each member represents a Senate district, just like the members of the House represent a House district. And those are two districts you need to find out who your senator and your representative are. You can go to the State Board of Elections website and look that up. Find all of your voter information, and it will give you all of your districts and wards all the way down to the most local level. School board, agriculture, everything. It will tell you that. Now, who really controls the House of Representatives? Well, as I said earlier, it is the Speaker of the House. And the Speaker of the House is elected from the House members. Typically, it's someone that's been there a while, has some status, has some seniority. Now, he presides over the House. He appoints committee members. And he determines House floor actions regarding bills sent to the floor and routes newly introduced legislation to the appropriate committees. Now, that can be a he or a she. Currently, it is a he. I hope that's not too politically incorrect, but it is currently a he. Now, the North Carolina General Assembly Senate, and as I said earlier, the President of the Senate is actually the Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. Now, he presides over the daily sessions if present, but who really controls it? Well, as I said earlier, the President pro tem, and I'm shortening that. It's most people say President pro tem, just because it's easier to pronounce. Now, he's elected by members of the Senate. He presides over the Senate in the absence of the Lieutenant Governor. He holds most of the power because he's there every day and he's been there a while. Now, he determines disposition of bills brought to the floor just like the Speaker of the House does, but he does it in the Senate chamber. And he appoints committee members and some state commission members. Now, what do the House and Senate members do? Well, they act as individual legislators. They can introduce legislation. They vote on legislation. They debate and vote, of course, on anything brought to the floor. They participate in caucuses, and they serve on one or more committees, and they can introduce legislation. Now, they serve on caucuses, and a caucus is a group within the legislative body that gathers, usually based on party, but it may also consider race, gender, or some other shared quality. Now, committees are groups of legislators assigned to study a particular issue or review proposed bills or resolutions and determine if they move to the floor. You have two types of committee. There's a standing committee or a select committee. The select committees are permanent committees, the standing committees are permanent committees with no end. Select committees, on the other hand, are commissioned to study or resolve a specific issue. Usually, they are time limited. Now, I want to talk about how legislation moves through the legislature. All right, there's typically an introduction and a first reading. This is when they introduce, now they don't read the whole bill because a lot of these bills are long, so they don't read the whole thing, they just read the title. And they introduce it on the floor. At that point, the Speaker of the House refers it to a committee, or the President of the Senate refers it to a committee. All right, the committee takes it and they study it for a while, and then they issue a report, at which time it goes back to the second reading and debate on the floor, unless the committee kills it. Now, the committee does not have to find on a piece of legislation and send it back to the floor. They can kill it in committee. They can let it die in committee, which very often legislation does. Now, after the second reading and debate, they have a third reading and further debate. And if the House or the Senate passes that legislation, they send it over to the other chamber. Now, once both chambers have had a crack at it, and they pass it, if they pass it, if it's not killed in committee, if they don't vote it down, if it's passed, it goes to the governor. All right. Now, the governor has two options here. He can sign the bill into law, or he can veto it. Now, if he signs it, the bill becomes a law. If he vetoes it, on the other hand, it's returned to the House and the Senate. Now, the House and the Senate at this point have two options. They can accept the veto and let the bill die, or they can override the veto with a 3/5 majority of both chambers. Now, occasionally they do so. It's rare that a veto is overridden, but it does happen on occasion. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not a good thing, but it does happen occasionally. Now, as citizens, what I recommend is that you find out a little bit more about the General Assembly. There are numerous places that you can search for your representatives, your senators. These are some website addresses: openstates.org, VT, that's the North Carolina State Board of Elections. You can just search NC State Board of Elections in your search engine, and that's a lot easier than typing that web address. There's a straight ncsbe.gov, or simply search "Who is my elected official?" And typically it will take you to a site where you can plug in your zip code, and if you know your +4, it will get you all the way down to your local individual wards and what have you. It's easy to do. In this day of computers, it is easy to do. If you have a smartphone, you can do it on your smartphone. I highly suggest that you do. Now, the responsibility for us as voters, first of all, is to learn more. Find out who your elected officials are. Contact them regularly to let them know we're watching what they do. So I highly suggest visit the North Carolina Legislature website for the General Assembly, take a look, and we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the show. I'm Robert Crescione. You're watching America in Danger. Stay tuned.
It's our once-a-year incredible warehouse sale.
And you can't miss it.
From traditional to modern, we have the best home furnishings at 60 to 90% off. Thousands of lamps, decorative accessories, and chandeliers. An incredible selection of designer furniture, all conveniently located off I-95. Transform your home this year and save big.
You know where to find us. 218 North Church Street, downtown Rocky Mount. We're back, and we're in the last quarter of the show, and we've been talking about some gun control, who's going to head the ATF if he is confirmed, which hopefully he will not be. Talked a little bit about the General Assembly.
and their website. We need to keep an eye on what they're doing. We need to let them know we're watching. They prefer to receive correspondence from us. They really do. I'm not making that up, because that helps them take a position. Our elected officials take a lot of pressure from special interests, from lobbyists, from PACs, from constituent groups, what have you. They take a lot of pressure. So if you write them and let them know how you feel, or call them, you can call them just as well, they tend to appreciate that. Now, that's not to say that they're all going to greet you with warm hugs and kisses, because you may not agree with the way they plan to vote, but you need to let them know nonetheless. There are some good things happening with firearms and some bad things. President Biden's calling for more gun control every day. The Democrats have introduced a ban on the sale, possession, and manufacture of gun silencers, which are technically suppressors. They do not silence a firearm, they simply suppress the report. Now, when was the last time you heard about a major crime being committed with silencers? You just don't. That's a solution looking for a problem, because there's not a problem with them. In fact, if you go shooting in public in Finland, you cannot fire your weapon without a suppressor on it. They're concerned about noise pollution. Now, the Iowa governor, Governor Kim Reynolds, signed legislation on Friday lifting some of the restrictions on buying and carrying a handgun for law-abiding citizens. And I understand, I received a report the other day that the North Carolina Sheriff's Association has dropped their defense of the archaic and burdensome pistol permit system here in North Carolina, which it's a redundant system because they're simply running a background check on you before they issue the permit. It would be better if the background check was run at the time of purchase, because you can get a pistol permit, you can go out and commit crimes, and there's no way to void that pistol permit in the system. It's still good for whatever length of time that is. I just got a text, and they reminded me that the loss of the Senate filibuster will absolutely pave the way for gun control. So if you don't know much about the filibuster, it's the requirement to have more than a simple one-person majority in the Senate, because right now we've got 50 Republicans, 50 Democrats, and Vice President Kamala Harris breaks the tie. So one vote can take away your firearms. One vote can set the wheels of tyranny in motion. It's my personal opinion that all votes in both the Senate and the House should require supermajorities. A simple 50-50 plus one is not acceptable to me. Everyone cries democracy, democracy, but I'm going to tell you what, the fastest way to lose your rights is for 50% plus one to take them away. It's much better if you have a supermajority. Gridlock, I don't care, because when government is gridlocked, hey, it's better for us. It's better for us. And we are not a democracy. This country is not a democracy. It's a republic. As such, the rule of the majority is supposed to be precluded by our system of government. However, what they've done is to, and this began long ago, was almost create a parliamentarian system or a parliamentary system in Congress where the party rules. And we don't need that. What we need are independent thinkers. We have people who say, I'm going to have lunch with the party, but I'm going to vote according to my conscience, according to my constituents, and according to the Constitution of the United States. I ran across an article today, and I am shocked. I am flabbergasted. I am floored. I don't know how this scandal can be. I'm being facetious on that now. Former Secretary of State Pompeo, Mike Pompeo, has been charged with violations of ethics because he asked some of his employees to do personal favors for him. Now, I'm not talking about sexual favors. I'm talking about, like, you know, pick up the kids at school type favors. Hey, while you're out for lunch, can you pick my lunch up? But because the media is what it is today, we're focused on that. When we have a president who's allowing China to increasingly be more and more aggressive in the Asian sector, we have Chinese spies in this country who have slept with a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Eric Swalwell, and he still sits on that committee. We had a Chinese spy working for Dianne Feinstein for 20 years. She's still in the Senate. And we have the Confucius Institutes in the universities to steal all of the intellectual property. And it never ceases to amaze me how the media will focus on some trivial things like that to whip us into a frenzy about, oh, that's so bad. Yeah, look at this over here. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this shiny object. Don't look at what we're doing here. That's the media game. When you learn that, you stop looking at some of these foolish things that they report. And you don't let the media control the mind. Look into it for yourself. If you do a Google search and you accept the first 5 objects that come up, first 5 items that come up as proof beyond a shadow of a doubt, then you're missing the boat. You're missing the boat because those are the things that big tech and the media want you to see. You have to dig deeper. And I'm not talking about go down the rabbit hole with some of these way out conspiracies, podcasts and what have you. I'm talking about look for yourself, do some research, read things besides Wikipedia, besides Google. I don't even use Google. I use other search engines that don't track everything you do. I mean, we're tracked enough that we don't need Google tracking us on top of that. But anyway, you know, we had a group of founding fathers who knew that if they created a democracy in this country, that the electorate would simply vote their freedom away, their liberty away. And that's the point we've reached in this country right now. We have rampant immigration diluting the vote. We have rampant voter fraud. And whether you believe that there were voting machine manipulations, or whether you just simply look at the proclivity of certain groups to cheat with absentee ballots, there was voter fraud. You know, so we are dangerously close to voting our liberty away because we have an uninformed electorate, and that's what I'm asking you to do. Inform yourself. Don't watch CNN and come out and try and engage in decent conversation, in intelligent conversation, because we've seen here in the past, just in the past 3 weeks, CNN is on the hot seat because of lying, because of admitting that they hype numbers, admitting that they promote things that aren't true. And if you watch, you know, Fox News is great about putting montages together with every network saying the same thing over and over and over. We're not dogs. We don't need to be trained or conditioned. We simply need to think for ourselves, and we don't need to vote our liberty away in some kind of phony democracy with that being crammed down our throats. You know, we have the media and politicians who don't know the difference between a democracy and a republic. And I assure you, we live in a republic, and we need to get back to that republic. Well, I am just about out of time, but I did want to hit on one more thing about China, Beijing is advancing their timeline to seize territory in the Asian region. Now, we know that they are putting a lot of emphasis into Africa. A lot of money, a lot of effort, building a lot, moving in. Reason being, Africa is rich with strategic minerals. China wants control of those strategic minerals. Now, you can talk all you want about Russia. China is the threat. Donald Trump knew that China was a threat, and he pushed back on China. And people were appalled. Well, now China has an asset in the White House, and we see what they're doing. They're full speed ahead. But we're out of time tonight. I want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back next Monday for more America in Danger. I'm Robert Crescione. Have a great week. Thank you for tuning in.